Okay, welcome everyone. This is a 60-minute virtual workshop on embodied radical self-care. My name is Molly. I'm a founder of Cultivate Balance along with Sierra, who is here on the call for those of you who are joining us live. And I'm also a certified Ayurvedic practitioner, and that sort of comes through in all of the work that I do. So we'll talk more about that in a bit. But before we get started, please take a moment to get comfortable in your body. You might like to have a journal to take some notes. I always love to take notes during a presentation like this. Tea, water, whatever kind of nourishment you need right now, please set yourself up with that. Okay. And I want to start off today by just acknowledging this moment that we're all in and really honoring you for being here. Things are really intense and can feel really uncertain in the world around us. And I'm just so grateful to all of you for committing to yourselves and for making time for yourselves to be here and hopefully get a little peace and a little rejuvenation. And just please continue to care for yourselves and to remember who you love during this tender time, because it's a lot. It's a lot. We have a lot of work to do. And yeah, I hope today's workshop brings you just a little more peace and a little more stability, even just in this moment. I hope that I can offer you some practices that you'll integrate and remember. And above all, I hope that you leave today feeling a little more inspired and energized to care for yourself and others. Okay, so let me just tell you again who I am. I'm Molly McConnell of Cultivate Balance. We, Sierra and I at Cultivate Balance, are really here to support you to feel your best so that you can go out in the world and do your best work. One of our philosophies is feel good, do good, and that comes through in all of our work. And we're also really committed to co-creating a more compassionate world. We know that the more we're able to support and sustain ourselves as individuals, the more power we have to be in collaboration and in community. And as much as Sierra and I are here at Cultivate Balance to support your learning, we're also very much committed to our own learning and unlearning as well. And we are located in Boulder, Colorado, which is Cheyenne and Arapaho land. Okay, so let's do just a little short activity to feel into our bodies just a bit before we really settle into the presentation. So I want you to go ahead and sit comfortably and just make some circles. You can't see my whole body, but I'm sitting cross-legged and I'm circling sort of as if my belly button were the pivot point. So I'm rounding through the spine, I'm letting my heart come forward and around, just making some circles around your center, bringing a little movement into the body and into the spine. Now go ahead and take that in the other direction. If it would feel good, you can close the eyes, you could circle through the head and neck, just moving in a way that brings you back into your body. Okay, now come back to center. We'll just take some seated cat-cows. For those of you who don't know, I'm also a certified yoga instructor, so that's part of the embodied component for me. So let's inhale, roll the shoulders back, lift the heart up, lift the gaze up. Exhale, round through the spine, shoulders roll forward, tuck the chin. Do that a few more times. Inhale, open the heart. Exhale, round through the spine. Last one, inhale. And exhale. Beautiful. And now if you have the space next to you, I'm really trying not to knock over my tea. I have a nail filer, I have a chapstick over here. All right, arms out to the side. My fingertips are just on the earth beside my body. Let's inhale, reach out and up to the sky. Your fingertips can touch above you, look up. Exhale, down to the earth. Drop your chin to your chest. We're just bringing some movement into the body. Again, inhale up to the sky. And exhale down. We're bringing movement into the body to just return to our center a little bit. Let's do that one more time. Inhale up. Exhale down. Keep your fingertips on the earth by your sides and just take some head rolls, some circles of the neck, reaching the fingers in opposite directions. I'm just taking half circles. You could take full circles. You could pause and hold. Beautiful. Oh, I knocked something over. All right, so come back to your center. Let your hands rest comfortably on your knees. Maybe shrug the shoulders up one more time. Roll them down the back and close the eyes. Let's go ahead and deepen the breath. And really feel yourself in your center. Come back to your body and let the distractions go away. Inhale through the nose and now exhale out through the mouth. Let it go. 2 more times like that. Inhale, sigh it out. Last one, big inhale and exhale. Feel yourself dropping back into your body. Stay where you are and continue to breathe. And take a moment to feel into the grounded and stable presence of the earth below us. We're all on the same earth, right? In all of the different places that we are, we're all feeling the same earth below us. Maybe let your body feel a little heavier as you feel into that earth grounded quality within yourself as you sink even deeper into your center. And then feel into the spaciousness and the possibility of the sky above you. Maybe find a little length in the spine, a little lightness as you breathe, knowing that it's the same sky for all of us. And then feel yourself between the two, filling your body with each breath and softening into this moment, existing between the earth and the sky in these human bodies. Maybe notice what arises in your mind, but don't even try to change it. Just let the thoughts pass. And take a moment to reflect on how you are feeling right now. And where in your body are you feeling it? What have you been feeling today, this week, the past year? And then see if you can come up with just one word that would describe something that you're needing or longing for right now. Maybe that word is connection. Maybe it's trust. Maybe it's safety. Just one word. Really feeling into what would help you feel a little more at home in your body and in your mind as you're thinking of what that one word could be. We're going to take that one word and create an intention for how the information in this workshop will support you. Okay, you can set an intention by simply making an I am statement. So maybe that is, I am connected, I am patient, I am trusting, I am safe, Whatever your word is, you can make that into an I am statement. Or you can just hold the word as it is in your heart for the duration of our time together, and maybe beyond that. And as we're moving throughout the presentation, look for insights that will support the cultivation of this intention. I'm going to be sharing a lot of different practices, a lot of different ideas, and I really want you to stay true to your theme and stay true to what you know you need, and connect with the pieces that are most readily going to support you to meet that need. Okay? So if your eyes were closed, you can open them back up. And just maybe repeat that word or that phrase to yourself a couple times as we move into the body of this workshop on embodied radical self-care. So let me give you a little outline of what we'll be going through together today. We're going to talk about embodied radical self-care. Okay, so we're going to start by talking about what does it mean to embody radical self-care, and why does it matter? We're going to break down each of those key terms, embody, radical, and self-care, to give ourselves a little more context. And then we're going to talk about how to embody practices of self-care through daily routine, as well as stress relief. And hopefully we'll have enough time to talk about cultivating connection as well. We'll see if we can get to all of that. And I want to acknowledge that this is not a time to add to collective overwhelm. So I'm really going to try to do my best to keep things as simple and as potent as I can. There's so much that I want to offer you all right now to support your journey in radical self-care. And the 60 minutes that we're spending together is really going to be a distillation of what I hoped is most relevant and timely for all of us right now. And throughout the workshop, you might hear me talk about a program called The Art of WorkLife Balance. That's something that I created. It's launching next week, and it inspired a lot of the material and the insights that we're going to explore today. So if you hear me mention that, know that that is sort of the origin for making this workshop possible at all. Okay, so what does it mean to embody radical self-care? To embody radical self-care is to live intentionally by making choices that support not only your individual well-being, but the well-being of others and of the planet. In this workshop, you will build the foundation for an intentional lifestyle that supports both purpose and pleasure by allowing replenishment to be a part of your work and your activism. We will focus on Ayurvedic practices that invite you to come home to your body and deepen your connection with others. Cultivating a more intentional life is an art, and it's an ongoing process. It is not something that happens overnight. So please, please be patient with yourself and know that it's worth it. We must commit to ourselves for the betterment of humanity. So I thank you again and again for being here and for making that commitment to yourself and to your wellness. So today I'll be talking about some specific radical self-care practices to support us even or especially during strange and chaotic times like these. So that we can keep following our passions and connecting with our purpose and making valuable contributions of our time and our energy, right? That's really going to be so important as the world continues to evolve. Okay, so let's get a little more specific. What is radical self-care? That's a term that Sierra and I use a lot at Cultivate Balance, and just recently I've added on the embodied part because that sort of brings another layer. But just talking about radical self-care. Radical self-care is an alternative to engaging with failing systems, corporate interests, and the notion that we are incomplete or unworthy. Knowing ourselves, reconnecting with the parts of ourselves that we love most, and designing our lives to support our deepest wellness are all acts of resistance. Not only is self-care a form of rebellion, but it also invites us to find greater clarity of mind, more time to organize, and more energy to activate change. Radical self-care is an invitation to live more intentionally, starting with ourselves. Feels so important. Okay, so let's break down each of these words, and we'll get more into the embodied component of that as well. So I define self-care as embracing rituals and practices that bring you pleasure. It's pretty simple. Self-care is also the first step in being able to care for others, which is really, I think sometimes self-care gets a bad rap because people care for themselves and they stop at self-care. And so that's why I say self-care is just the very first step that then enables all of these other critical steps for how we interact with the world. Self-care is the personal practices that help us feel good. It is about finding pleasure and joy in our day-to-day experience. And I was just reading this Bell Hooks book where she just defines joy as the feeling that comes from using one's own powers to the fullest. And I think of that in terms of listening to our bodies. I think of that in terms of caring for ourselves. I think of that in terms of like feminine intuition and creativity. So prioritizing pleasure and joy is prioritizing that feeling that comes from using one's own powers to the fullest. That's Bell Hooks in Sisters of the Yam. It's a really incredible book. But self-care is also making choices that sustain our physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And it's offering ourselves compassion and opportunities for rejuvenation. And you maybe have heard Sierra and I use this Audrey Lorde quote before because it really sums everything, so much of what we believe in up. And Audrey Lorde says, "Caring for myself is not an act of self-indulgence. It is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare." So when we talk about self-care, we are talking about our role in something much bigger than just the way that we're relating to ourselves. And I think it's so important to continue to come back around to that. So I'm curious. I want to give you a moment to reflect on what is your current relationship to self-care and routine like? Is it something that you know you want that's hard to have? Is it something that you feel better when you do? Is it something that you like to have a checklist for, otherwise it doesn't happen? What is your relationship like to self-care and routine right now? And then ask yourself, when is it most challenging for you to implement practices of caring for yourself? I often find that it's the hardest for me to implement self-care in the moments when I need it most. And when do you feel most deserving of self-care? Self-care really has a component of worthiness and self-love. So it's important to identify how and when we feel deserving of our own care so that we can really cultivate that feeling of worthiness even more. Okay, so that was a little breakdown of self-care. Now let's talk about what it means to embody. To embody is to embrace the sensation of feeling at home within yourself and within your body. It's about returning to your center. So when we started this workshop together, we did a little embodiment practice, a little yoga to return to our center so that we could feel a little more like ourselves in this coming together tonight. To embody is also to act out of care rather than control. And this is a big one, especially for women living under the patriarchy, but it can happen to anyone. So notice how you relate to yourself. And in the moments when we feel most embodied, those are the moments when we're caring most for ourselves, when we're not striving to control ourselves. Embodiment is also about prioritizing pleasure. You'll hear me bring this up a lot because it's such a guiding force in what helps us come back to ourselves and feel good and feel our best and, feel energized. Embodiment is also a willingness to be present with ourselves. So when we started out with that little embodied yoga practice, we came back to our breath. We sat with our thoughts that were arising and we were present with ourselves. That is embodiment. It's a noticing of sensation, of listening to our body's needs and honoring them. It's embodiment to say, wow, I'm really thirsty. I'm going to make myself a cup of tea. That is part of your embodied practice. It is as simple as listening to your body's needs and honoring them to the extent that you can in that moment. Embodiment is also about moving through the world in kindness and in collaboration with yourself. How different do you feel when you're loving and appreciating yourself versus those moments where you feel frustrated? We can't escape ourselves, so we might as well be in kindness and in collaboration and in love in our embodied experience, because that's honestly what makes us human. And then the last component of embodiment that I think is so important is living our values. Okay, so embodiment also has to do with the choices that we make in the world to demonstrate our belief systems and what is important to us, demonstrating those things to the world in the choices that we make, living our values. And I do have another Audrey Lorde quote for you because she's a real inspiration to me. And I came across this essay of hers. It's actually a speech in Adrienne Marie Brown's Pleasure Activism. And since then, I've listened to Audrey Lorde read this speech probably 25 times, and it's really resonating for me. So I just want to share a little quote from that with you. So she says, "It is not a question only of what we do. It is a question of how acutely and fully we can feel in the doing," right? That is embodiment. Once we know the extent to which we are capable of feeling that sense of satisfaction and completion, that is embodiment. We can then observe which of our various life endeavors bring us closer to that fullness. The aim of each thing we do is to make our lives and the lives of our children richer and more possible, right? That also speaks to living our values as a component of embodiment. So take a moment to yourself to reflect and think of a time that you felt embodied. What was that like? How did it feel? Where did you feel it in your body? That Sierra and I have talked about. Sometimes we feel embodiment as sort of like an expansion of heart space. And what were you doing in that moment in your life when you felt this sensation of embodiment that you're remembering right now? And what series of events and choices made this feeling possible? Just take a moment with those thoughts, those reflections. Maybe take a deep breath to continue your embodiment, your centering in this moment. And now let's talk about the word radical. I define radical as taking thoughtful action to address challenges at the root. So radical is the care that you demonstrate to others and the planet as a result of your care for yourself, right? So that's that second step. Self-care is the first step, and this radical component of self-care brings in that component of follow through and of building on the foundation as we connect with others. Radical is also our increased desire to take thoughtful action, to be intentional, to make a deeper impact, even when it is not easy. It is a willingness to be curious, to ask questions, and to create space for what is possible instead of just falling into what is. Radical is the ongoing remembrance that we are all connected. We all have the same earth beneath us, the same sky above us, and that we must think beyond ourselves to co-create a more compassionate world. Radical is also loving yourself, caring for yourself as you would care for a child, speaking to yourself as if you were speaking to your best friend. Loving ourselves in this day and age, I promise you, is one of the most radical things that we can do. And along with that, knowing that you are worthy of love and of care and of kindness, right? If you don't believe that you're worthy, self-care is not going to work. Okay? And radical is also committing to a more intentional way of being. Angela Davis says, radical simply means grasping at the root. And one of the definitions of radical really is just about grasping at the root. And I think it's important to remember that as we center and think of our connection to the earth. Sometimes being radical is just like understanding sort of the origin of what's happening so that we can address it. Okay, just a couple reflection questions for you here. Have you ever thought of caring for yourself as a tool for caring for others? And when you feel good and connected to yourself, what do you notice about your ability to connect with others and to connect with your work? I notice that when I feel good and grounded and connected to myself, my relationship with my work is much more inspired and motivated. My communications with Sierra and our business are much more clear and heart-centered. So take a moment to think about what you notice in your ability to connect with others and your work when you feel connected to yourself. All right, now we're going to start moving into some more specific practices. We're going to talk about self-care as daily routine. We're going to talk about embodiment as stress reduction. And if we have time, we'll talk a little bit about cultivating connection as radical relating. We'll see if we can fit all that in. But before we do, just want to say a little note on Ayurveda. Ayurveda is the lens through which I offer ideas about radical self-care. I did not invent Ayurveda. Ayurveda comes from ancient India, and a lot of people worked really hard to make this wisdom possible for us. And if that's something you're interested in learning more about, I recommend you check out our Foundations of Ayurveda webinar to get more into the history of it. But I just want to share that my role in connecting with Ayurveda is to synthesize this ancient wisdom in the modern context through the prism of my own lived experience to make it hopefully accessible and supportive for you. Okay. And also in the Art of Work-Life Balance, which is this more comprehensive program, I do elaborate more on Ayurveda and the doshas and how the elements play into our experience. Today, I'm going to try and keep it a little more simple than that. But if the more in-depth Ayurvedic approach is appealing to you, we have more opportunities that we'd be happy to share with you. Okay. So we're going to talk about self-care as daily routine. So think about, what does self-care look like for you? You might have reflected on this a bit earlier, but just hold that thought and ask yourself, which of the things that you do every day bring you joy? Are there certain things that you do sometimes, but you know you feel better when you do them more? I think that's a big one for a lot of us. So just feel into your current experience of self-care. And let me just remind you that self-care it's about embracing rituals and practices that bring you pleasure and joy and contribute to your overall well-being. Self-care is the first essential step in being able to care for others. And we have the opportunity to make choices that sustain our physical and emotional well-being through simple daily and weekly practices. And in Ayurveda, we use the notion of routine, or the structure of a routine, to offer a structure for self-care, to offer accountability and integration for self-care. We use the structure of a daily routine. And attuning to a daily routine is really the ultimate practice for connecting more deeply with ourselves and with others and with the natural world around us. Aligning with the earth, with the rhythms of the day, is really what Ayurveda is all about, because it enables us to access greater energy and clarity, which ultimately supports us to show up for what we believe in. So throughout the day, from the Ayurvedic perspective, different doshas, or elemental energies, are present at different times of the day. So in other words, different hours of the day are guided by different qualities of the doshas or the elements. So certain times of the day are more fiery, and there's ways that we can use that fiery energy within our daily routine. So we're going to share some specific practices, and I'm going to share my screen with you. Is it there? Are you, is that, how do I know? It's sharing the document that says, oh no, let's try again. Okay, screen share, this one. Okay, perfect. So daily routine checklist. Sierra and I love a checklist because it's very satisfying to check things off, honestly. It's a great tool for accountability and just like remembering the things you want to get done in a day. So we love to share checklists with our community. So this is a daily routine checklist. I always like to put an affirmation at the top. This one says, I embody radical self-care. But you also have an affirmation that you're working with right now from the beginning of this workshop. So you can be holding that for yourself as well. So as I mentioned, there are different elemental influences throughout the day according to Ayurveda. So the first part of the day here from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. is a kapha time of day. It's an earth and water time of day. And that's a really good time to harness the energies of earth and water to center. Okay, I'm going to go over all the times of day and then we'll get into the specific practices. So then from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is a pitta time of day. That's a fiery time of day. And that's a really good time to strategize using those fiery qualities within ourselves. From 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. is a vata time of day. During that time of day, there are more ethereal energies present. So it's the wind, the air and space qualities are present. So this is a really good time to explore. And then from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. is another kapha time of day. So we use that energy of earth and water to restore. Okay, so let's start from the top here. So at 6 a.m., between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m., in order to center, some of the practices of radical self-care that we can be doing during that time would be to drink warm lemon or lime honey water, to exercise or stretch. It's a really good time to be in our bodies, to start our day embodied. And then you want to orient to an ongoing project. So the energy of kapha, or earth and water, that is present at this time has like really excellent memory retention and high endurance. So it's a good time to like come back to something that you're studying or a project that you've been sort of working through in an enduring way. Okay, so then from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., we get into that fiery pitta time, and it's a great time to strategize, which means engaging in mentally stimulating activities or like problem solving. It's really good during the pitta time of day. And also, when the sun is highest in the sky, the fire is strongest in our body and in our digestion. So it's actually the time that we want to eat our biggest or most substantial meal of the day. And then another key strategy for pitta time is to take a walk after lunch. It will support digestion and it will also support your mind. Okay, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. That's a vata time of day where we're going to have a more exploratory energy available to us. So this means that it's a really good time to create and collaborate and communicate, to be in that inspired and connected space with others. It's also a good time to sip herbal tea to stay hydrated, to help keep ourselves grounded so we don't float away. And it's one of the best times to practice mindfulness, meditation, journaling, reading, because we have more access to that creativity and inspiration and sort of ethereal energy. And lastly, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. is another kapha time of day. That's earth and water. So we want to connect with loved ones. Kapha, earth and water are very loving elements. So it's a good time to connect with loved ones. And we also want to decrease stimulation and really ground back in. So part of that is also setting boundaries with our electronics, turning electronics off by 11 p.m. And then another key way to restore at the end of the day is to massage the soles of the feet with almond oil. Okay, so those are some specific practices for radical self-care that you could be doing every single day, some version of that. And as you're thinking of those practices, I invite you to return to your one-word affirmation or intention that you set at the beginning of the workshop, to think, which practices that we just went over would be most supportive of meeting that need for you? What would be the best things to start with based on what you've identified you're needing or longing for right now? All right. So now we're going to move into stress relief as it relates to embodiment. So I want you to ask yourself, what does stress feel like in your body? For me, it feels like clenching my jaw. That's a big one. Does it feel like buzzing? Does it feel like living just sort of outside of yourself and not centered? Does it feel like not being quite comfortable? What does stress feel like in your body? Just notice what arises when you ask yourself that question, because it's helpful to remember our indicators that stress is arising so that we can do something about it. And the something that we can do about it are the practices that I will share with you in just a moment here. So just as a reminder, embodiment is about returning to your center. It is about giving yourself permission to be present with yourself, not getting caught in the past or the future, right? That's part of stress is often like thinking about the past or thinking about the future. So embodiment is about giving yourself permission to be present, centered, not feeling buzzy just outside of ourselves, but centered within ourselves. Embodiment as stress relief. And as we allow ourselves to be embodied, we become more readily able to notice our rising stress response and to implement a practice for rejuvenation before that stress response takes over. Reducing stress through embodied practices that help us stay centered gives us more space and clarity to identify and align the intersection of our skills, our values, and our highest purpose in order to meet the needs of humanity. So let's go ahead and review some key themes of stress relief and of embodiment, along with some simple Ayurvedic practices for each. So I'm going to screen share with you again this one. Okay, you can see it, good. And now we're on page 2 here, reminders for stress relief and embodiment. Okay, so let's go over the themes here. They're numbered in this sort of pinkish color, and then we'll go through the practices in each of them. So to find stress relief and embodiment, we want to find stability through consistency. That's a key theme. We want to feel grounded with rituals of rejuvenation, to explore gentle movement of body and mind, to cultivate slow and sustained nourishment, and to reduce ungrounding and overstimulating activities. Okay, so those are the key themes that are going to help keep us on track to reduce stress and feel more embodied. So within each of those, let's talk about the practices that come up. So we can find stability through consistency by maintaining at least 3 items in our daily routine. So you might have 3 items that you do every day that feel really good for you. You might want to review some of the items that I shared in that checklist and choose 3 items that you want to start with. Another way to find stability is to dial in your sleep schedule. When people talk to me about being stressed, my first response is to talk to them about their relationship with sleep. Sleep is so important in allowing our bodies to heal and rejuvenate, okay? The next way to find stability through consistency is to do something that brings you joy every day. And you remember that definition of joy from Bell Hooks about feeling fully in your power. Okay, do something that brings you joy or pleasure every day. Real simple. Next, feel grounded with rituals of rejuvenation. So one way that you can do that, and I mentioned this in the daily routine, is to massage the soles of your feet with oil before bed each night. You can just use a tiny amount of oil. You can also put on a pair of socks afterwards if you're worried about your sheets. This is something that I do every day and really love. It makes a big difference, and it supports sleep. Another way that we can feel grounded is to practice our legs up the wall. It's a yoga pose. You make your body into a little inverted L. You scoot your glutes up to the wall. You send your feet up. You lay your spine back on the earth and just take some nice deep breaths. I like to do that for like 10 minutes. Sometimes I oil my feet, put some socks on, and then do legs up the wall before bed. Sometimes I do it in the middle of the workday if I just need to feel grounded. And another way that we can feel grounded with rituals of rejuvenation is to take a bath. Water is so, so deeply healing. Okay. And then another theme here is to explore gentle movement of body and mind. If we're talking about stress relief, stress is really stored in the body, right? So if we can be moving the body, and connecting with movement of the mind in terms of our thoughts and reflection, then we can pass some of that stress through and also feel more embodied at the same time. So practices that support that would be to exercise for 30 to 60 minutes a day. Could be dancing, it could be a walk, it could be yoga, cardio, riding your bike, whatever that is for you, you decide. You just got to move your body daily. At least 30 minutes. And then make time to journal and reflect, right? This speaks to how we're moving our minds. It's really important to give ourselves an outlet to release some of the things that we store in our minds also, or to process them, to understand ourselves more deeply. Another practice to explore gentle movement of body and mind is to just be outside. Maybe that's taking a walk, going for a hike. Maybe you want to journal or read just sitting outside. Our connection to nature and to the earth and to the elements is so, so key in mirroring to us how to come home to ourselves and feel more embodied within ourselves. All right, number 4 theme for cultivating stress relief and embodiment is to cultivate slow and sustained nourishment. So that means eating warm and well-cooked, well-spiced foods. If you know Sierra and I, you know that we really advocate for warm-cooked vegetables over raw salads. And this is a big one for giving ourselves grounding nourishment. Warm, well-cooked, well-spiced foods for slow, sustained nourishment. Another one is to maintain consistent meal times. Try to eat around the same time every day. This will support the energy of routine. It'll give ourselves a little more structure to not feel so stressed. It'll help us feel embodied in that routine. And then another way to cultivate slow and sustained nourishment is to stay hydrated with herbal tea. We love herbal tea at Cultivate Balance because it is such an incredible delivery of medicine, right? Herbs have so much potent medicine. You put it in water, you drink the water, the medicine is in you. I mean, what a dream. And it's also a way to, stay hydrated and feel embodied and come back to your center. All right. Lastly, a couple things to reduce in order to support embodiment and stress relief would be less screen time, reduce cold raw food. Like I said, more warm cooked foods, and also less coffee. Coffee tends to increase stress and it can sort of take us out of our bodies if we have too much. So just notice how that feels for you. Okay. So let me close out of that. Yeah, I just can't stress this enough. We really can't take effective action if we are feeling depleted and burnt out. That's why stress relief and practices of embodiment are so key. I've said this before and I'll say it again, we must allow replenishment to be a part of our work, of our activism, and of our commitments to our families so that we can really come back and show up as our best. And if you're interested in how the doshas, or how the mind-body types, the elements, relate to individual stress responses and optimal stress relief, I do include a lot of information about that specifically in the Art of Work-Life Balance. I talk a lot about practices for preventing burnout specifically, because I see that as a huge problem in our culture currently. So if this has piqued your interest and you're wanting more and you're wanting to go deeper and understand how some of these themes relate specifically to you, you might like to learn a little more about the program, The Art of Work-Life Balance. And we are getting close to the end of our time, but I do just want to say a couple things about cultivating connection and radical relating. True wellness is collective wellness, right? So again, self-care is the first step, but really what comes after that is what self-care is actually about. So contributing to collective wellness and the way that we cultivate connection around that is so important, right? Taking care of ourselves is just the first step that enables us to collaborate and connect and show up for what we believe in. And finding ways to work together effectively and communicate clearly supports us to connect with our purpose and to build more momentum around what we have to offer to the world. Radical self-care really challenges us to see beyond our own needs, to acknowledge the experiences of others so that we can create space for everyone to thrive. And recognition of others is part of cultivating a strong and supportive community. Sometimes I like to think of Ayurveda as the art of living in relationship to the world around us, right? We talk about aligning with the rhythms of the day. We talk about how the elements are within us and around us, but also there's this component of how we exist in relationship to others that is a huge part of Ayurveda. So we're not going to have time to go into some more in-depth components of cultivating connection from an Ayurvedic perspective, but this is something that has been absolutely fascinating to me this year. I've really flipped my lens in terms of, or evolved my lens of how I see relationships based on the Ayurvedic doshas. So if you know someone in your life that has a lot of fire, what does that say about how they like to be related to? And how can you use that information to better see and understand and support them to create a dynamic where you both feel better and more able to collaborate? This is something that Sierra and I both have been thinking and talking about. We've made some really cool resources around how to relate from an Ayurvedic perspective that I just think is so critically important. And it's a lot. And this is another thing that I get into. There's a whole section, the entire third part of, or the entire second part of the Art of Work-Life Balance is about connection. It's about understanding and appreciating others to create spaces for more effective communication and collaboration and creativity, all of the things that we're going to need in order to work together to really co-create the more compassionate world that we all know is possible. So if that is something that you're curious about, that other radical part of radical self-care, which is about cultivating connection, then don't hesitate to reach out to me, Molly at cultivatebalance.com, and please also look into the Art of Work-Life Balance, because it will give you so much more in-depth information on that. Okay. So, and I guess while I'm talking about the Art of Work-Life Balance, I'll just mention a couple more things in case some of you are interested. This is a 3-part program that I have poured my heart and soul into over the last year based on what I have observed the need to be in the world, which has a lot to do with stress reduction, burnout prevention, cultivating connection, connecting more deeply with purpose, loving ourselves more, right? Radical self-care, collective wellness, all of these themes that I've just been observing in such an intense way. I've really tried to channel into a course that offers Ayurvedic lifestyle wisdom for you to live your best life, which includes relating to others and taking care of the planet. It's a 3-part course, and it's really something. So as we close out today, I just want to remind you to continue to take care of yourself now. Sometimes I think people think that self-care is like a thing that we do later, like, oh, I'll deserve it more later, I'll have more time later. We absolutely need to be taking care of ourselves now so that we can continue to show up for our purpose in the coming days, weeks, months, and throughout the year ahead. Because if you burn out, if you are too exhausted and overwhelmed, you will not be able to support your community with the skills and the values that you bring to the table. So it is so critically important. The most important thing for you to do is to take care of yourself right now. That includes however you're going to spend the rest of your day. I encourage you to choose a practice that is really rejuvenative. It could be one of the things I shared. It could be a bath. It could be an oil massage. It could be alone time, a book that you want to read, whatever that is for you. Choose a rejuvenative practice and offer that to yourself today. And let these practices of radical self-care that I've offered you give you an opportunity to integrate your own experience of the world right now so that you can activate having both the energy and the clarity to align your intention with your action. Something I talk a lot about in the art of work-life balance. How can we feel our best so that we can align our intentions, how we want the world to be, with the action that we take to make it so. Wow, what a joy to be here with all of you. Maybe take one last moment to return to your one-word intention, reflecting on everything that I've shared with you for the last hour, and pulling some of the gems that are going to be most relevant and helpful and supportive and inspiring to your individual experience. Let's take a deep breath. How about 2 more deep breaths to really solidify that? Maybe repeating your intention to yourself. Thank you so much. And I hope, if anything, that you leave here feeling a little more inspired to care for yourself.